What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Gooner channel, a channel 100% dedicated to the Arsenal, who, as we all know, are by far the greatest team the world has ever seen. And I want to look ahead to tomorrow's exciting day of Premier League football, starting as it does with Liverpool's visit to Brentford, followed up by our trip away to Burnley, and rounded off nicely by Chelsea's visit to the Etihad Stadium to take on Pep Guardiola's treble-winning, title-challenging Manchester City. Arsenal fans now getting used to it. We did this last season. We know just how important every game in the run-in is going to be for us. You cannot drop any points. Manchester City, whilst they don't look in their top form at the moment, they weren't always convincing against Copenhagen and beat them 3-1. They weren't always convincing at home to Everton, but still managed to get the goals when it counted. Erling Haaland finding his goal scoring again. Liverpool equally haven't been in their top form either. Yes, they beat Burnley at home last week, 3-1. Scoreline suggests a much easier game than it actually was for them. Of course, they were beaten quite soundly by us, and they are without some key players. So it is possible, I suppose, that Liverpool could go to Brentford and only get a draw. And should that happen, our trip to Burnley takes on a significance of the possibility that we could go top of the table if we scored by more than 2 goals. If we win by more than 2 goals. It might only last until Manchester City batter Chelsea. But could Chelsea, who starting to come together a little bit, of course they've got the League Cup final to look forward to, as have Liverpool, could that distract both sets of players in these games? We know, as Arsenal fans from last season's title run-in, that every game takes on a significance. You have to be up for it. But we also know as Arsenal fans that we have that potential to just not turn up in key games. Certainly true when we went to Fulham just before the new year. And last week's more than convincing, demolition of West Ham has certainly raised the expectations of the fan base. If we play anything like as well against Burnley as we did against West Ham, look, Burnley have won 3 games this season. There's only one team that's conceded more than them. They look absolutely destined to go down. And they look destined to go down playing a kind of football that perhaps they're not ready for in the Premier League. Could play into our hands. Could be exactly the thing we need. We've shown time and again this season that when teams come at us, that we're able to pick them off and find space behind them. You'd have to be hopeful of that. Now, of course, we are going into this match with some injuries. I want to take a look at these 3 matches and try and analyse what it might mean to the Premier League title, given that we are coming into the title run-in now. First of all, can you predict anything but a win for Liverpool away to Brentford? I don't think it's going to be an easy game for them. There's a couple of factors here. Certainly one is the fact that they're going to be without Szoboszlai and Mo Salah, that they're unlikely to have Trent Alexander-Arnold. They certainly don't look in the kind of form that they have been in this season. They've also conceded a goal in every one of their last 5 games. And Brentford, having just beaten Wolves, have started to get the results that their form has actually suggested they're capable of. They went really close to beating Tottenham and disappointing at the very end. They really gave a good account of themselves for long periods against Manchester City, even if it was a defensive action. And there's a certain shithousery that's gotten into their game at the moment, which you don't expect from the team managed by such a gentleman as Thomas Frank. It's not what you expect from Brentford. It adds an element to this game against Liverpool that's going to be really interesting. I honestly don't think that Neil Maupay's antics in trying to wind people up is going to work particularly well against a team as professional and as experienced as Liverpool are throughout much of their team. The spine of that team is a Premier League winning side, one that's been up there or thereabouts for most of the last 5 years. Last season was a massive blip. They've come back stronger than ever, and of course it is Klopp's swan song season. But with the fact that Liverpool don't seem to be able to keep clean sheets, Brentford have their tails up after that great win against Wolverhampton Wanderers. It's not out of the question that this game could be a draw or even a win for Brentford. I'm certainly not going to bet on it. I would say Liverpool look likely to win that game. But what if they don't? What if it is a draw? When we go to Burnley, if we can get a victory there, we could go top of the table, even if it's only until Chelsea visit the Etihad. But that could be a really important psychological boost, because as we go further into this, Liverpool could start to experience what we did last season, which is when you're top for quite a while, you feel like you're being hunted down. And for me, I think there would be some poetic justice to the idea that we might win the league this season, having spent very little time on top of the table. Nestled nicely as we are in that third spot at the moment, with just a lot of positivity around the club. Of course, towards the end of last year, it all fell apart really badly. But this season, I want to talk about the fact we've only lost 4 games. The first of which was that Newcastle game, which we lost 1-0. And you have to admit, whether you think it should have stood or not, that goal that separated the 2 teams on that day was hugely controversial. Our next defeat was away to Villa, where we played superbly well but couldn't make the most of our chances. Had a goal disallowed right at the end because it touched everybody in the hand on the way in. And it was one defensive lapse that led to McGinn's goal against us. Villa, of course, had beaten Man City the week before, so it wasn't a terrible defeat. But then you have to look at the fact that we played superbly well against West Ham, but just were not able to finish our chances. And then the one really bad defeat of our season so far, away to Fulham, out of ideas, looking tired and fatigued. The trip to Dubai seems to have done us good. We came back with everybody already having written us off and demolished Palace 5-0. Then, of course, we went away to Nottingham Forest and got the job done, even if it wasn't convincing. And then against Liverpool, thoroughly convincing. I don't think anyone expected us to play quite as well as we did and put them away in the way that we did. And then last week's 6-0 thrashing of the Hammers, where their fans walking out at half-time. So we're in a rich vein of form, but we are carrying some injuries as well. Really encouraged by Mikel Arteta's press conference when he was asked about injuries to Tomiyasu, Zinchenko, Jorginho, Jesus and Emil Smith-Rowe, and said he wasn't ruling any of them out. They might all be in contention. Because the win against West Ham, the lineup wasn't one that I think most of us wanted, but it was kind of forced on Arteta. I've been saying that he needed to rotate. He did that by necessity. And the team he put out there was certainly strong enough. And you have to say, look, Burnley are where they are for a reason. There's only one team that's conceded more goals than them, and they've only won 3 games this season. It's unlikely they're going to keep a clean sheet against us, and it's hugely unlikely that they're going to be able to score more than 1 against us as well. So I would fancy us to win that game. So looking at the possible lineup of the Arsenal game tomorrow, if it's the same lineup that took on West Ham, I don't think anyone will be as worried as they were. But the bench could at least look a lot better because realistically, against West Ham, if we hadn't done the job, there weren't a lot of options to bring on. And you noticed when we did bring on Nelson and Nketiah, even against the West Ham, who'd kind of packed up and left with the fans at half-time, they didn't really look close to scoring or creating. It was our first 11 that did all the damage, and that's the first 11 that I would expect to start tomorrow. But if Zinchenko or Tomiyasu are anywhere near fully fit, perhaps bringing them in instead of Jakub Kiwior would further solidify that back four. In the midfield, everyone was surprised Jorginho didn't play against West Ham after how well he played against Liverpool. He might well be back, but would you now necessarily bring him in or keep him on the bench? Again, Emil Smith-Rowe just hasn't played the minutes to be thrown into this game, but as a player off the bench could certainly do a great job. And the bigger question really has to be around Gabriel Jesus. In any normal circumstances, he's our starting number 9. He's not a goal-scoring number 9 like Haaland, but he is creatively magnificent and does create a little bit of magic every time he plays. He's always there or thereabouts amongst the goals. And in the last game he played, he scored and assisted. So if he was back to any kind of form, then you would throw him in. But Trossard has looked good every time we've played him. And so my prediction in the lineup, I would say perhaps Jakub Kiwior could lose his place, but I think we start with the same team we did against West Ham. We have players who can counter brilliantly well. I think we are the best transitional side in the Premier League at the moment. And I hope that Burnley stick true to their values and come attacking us and leave those spaces behind us, and that we can be somewhat clinical again. We don't need to win this game 6-0. We don't even need to win it 2-0. 1-0 to the Arsenal would do it. I really feel confident, and I think that if things do go slightly wrong, the fact that we might have a slightly stronger bench could make the difference tomorrow. And finally, Manchester City versus Chelsea. Look, I know I've said that Manchester City aren't in anything like their top form. They're not blowing teams away just at the moment, but they're kind of keeping their powder dry. They're doing just enough, and that's what title-winning teams do. They get themselves over the line. You don't get an extra trophy for dazzling in every game. With Kevin De Bruyne back in the team and playing as well as ever, with Rodri in there doing such a fantastic job of marshalling the midfield, and Erling Haaland back to some form in front of goal, I don't really see how Chelsea get anything out of this game at all. Of course, they're going to have one eye on the League Cup coming up later this month. Liverpool might suffer for the same thing. Chelsea's season is going to come down to those cups because they're not going to make it into Europe any other way. And most of this season, they've been a banter club for very good reason. Football's funny though, isn't it? Anything could happen. What if Rodri gets sent off? What if Haaland and Rodri get sent off? If Liverpool pick up maximum points and we pick up maximum points and Manchester City pick up maximum points, if all the title challengers get 3 points tomorrow, we roll on. Of course, Man City take on Brentford in midweek and they have a chance to go clear at the top. Our game at home against Newcastle next weekend takes on that significance. Great chance for revenge as well. And Newcastle, I think, are there for the taking. We're going to roll on and on and on like this until one of these three teams starts to lose. We have all got very winnable games until Manchester City take on Liverpool in March. I personally think Liverpool are going to fall away. I think that they've outplayed their expectations. I think they've outperformed expectations by a distance, given how new a lot of this team is and how little they've played with each other. I think Manchester City will put their foot down, but there could be some complacency in the Manchester City team. And so I am hopeful, and it's great to be in the race to this point. So that's if all three teams win and we're in the same position and we go in with one fewer game to play. But I have a sneaky feeling this Brentford-Liverpool game early kickoff could give us a bit more hope. And then because it's football and anything can happen, who knows? Perhaps Sterling will turn up and score a hat-trick. Manchester City expecting to walk over Chelsea like everybody else has been doing. Could it be a trickier game? Certainly in the past, Chelsea, Man City would have been a close game. Who knows? Has Pochettino ridden out the toughest part of his tenure? Is he going to come good? I really hope so, but I doubt it. But in any case, I'm going to be watching all three matches, and I'll be back tomorrow to discuss the results and what it means for the Premier League. Till then, I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think the scores are going to be? And how close do you think this title is going to go? Do you think it's going to go to the wire? And I want to hear from you if you think Arsenal are going to do it this season because of our experience last season and because we're coming together at just the right time and our injury problems are abating. Let me know in the comments. Till I see you tomorrow. Be lucky. Lots of love.